Good morning.
Morning.
How are you, Stephen?
Okay.
Good. Good, good, good. Okay. Got a new deal going here with my microphone lower this time. Yeah, I like this better. Okay. Yeah, well, just to comment on the discussion question, I'm glad all of you feel uh, comfortable with basic calculations. I've always said that we we don't need to know a lot of math necessarily to be graphic designers, but we do need to know how to make conversions, um, uh, fractions of an inch to decimals, basic multiplication and division, because we are dealing with numbers, we are dealing with measurements. That has always been the case in design. Knowing how to measure accurately has always been a requirement. So we need to be at least comfortable with that. But as far as anything such as other higher levels of math, algebra, calculus, anything like that, that is not in the mix. And if it was, I probably would have never been a graphic designer because I failed. Well, I didn't fail, but I did miserably in math when I was in college. Actually, wanted to be an architect, and that was my goal out of high school, is to become an architect. And actually went down to USC and talked to a counselor, and she laid out all of the classes that I had to take to the School of Architecture, and so much of it was math that made me decide to do something else. So anyway, okay, we are going to move on with more prepress, and what I want to talk about this morning is, well, let me just switch over to share my screen. And what I want to talk about in this lecture is working with a printer. Ultimately, if you get a job printed, or if the design that you're doing is going to be printed, there's a lot of different scenarios in how that will get done and who will be involved in that. And this lecture is basically directed to you in how you will handle a print job if that is what is required, if you are the person. In other words, if you're doing a freelance job, then and the client that's asking you to to design this has no idea of printing, has no idea of where they're going to get it printed, and is looking to you to be the person that takes care of that, then you need to know how to go about dealing with a printer. Now, if you're working for a studio, a design firm, or advertising agency, and they're asking you to design a brochure, you might not be involved in the printing. Chances are you won't be. Chances are they're going to ask you to design it. They will ask you to design it to be print ready, but you will not actually be interfacing with the printer and doing the press checks and getting the approvals and all of that. That actually is kind of nice because it's a whole another skill set that you don't really have to be involved with. But for the most part, if you are in the higher levels of a design firm, an art director or creative director, then you will be doing press checks. And so you do have to know what that's all about. We don't need to know how to print, physically print, because we're not involved in printing. That's the printer's job. But we do have to know how to guide them and advise them into what it is we want, so that when a job is printed, that it comes out the way we want it. We cannot accept, as a designer, a badly printed job. Now, chances are, if you're dealing with a reputable printer, they're going to do a good job. But there are a lot of fly-by-night printers out there that do real crappy jobs in printing, and they pass it over to you like, hey, buddy, that's what you get. And, that's the best we can do. And so you really need to find a good vendor, a good printer. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. But mainly what I want to do is, what is your involvement with a printer? So let's take the example that you're freelancing a job, and a client comes to you and says, I want you to design me this brochure or whatever, flyer, and I need you to get it printed for me. And I need 5,000 copies by next Tuesday. And I'm going to pay you to do everything. Basically, what I want is delivered flyers to my office. Okay. Obviously, not only are you designing now, is you're involved in the printing. So how do you go about that? Where do you start? And what questions are you going to be able to ask, or do you need to ask printers? So in my first lecture, I told you to write down in big letters, in capital letters on a piece of paper, talk to your printer. So important to know who's printing this job before you design it, because you need to know what they expect. You need to know what file format they're requiring, and what they need of you to get the job done. So the more communication you have with the printer, the better. And the earlier in the project, the better. What you don't want to do, really, and sometimes you can't avoid this, but what you don't want to do is design everything and then go find a printer, and then only to find out that printer is going to charge you an arm and a leg to print that job because of whatever, because of the amount of pages that you have, because of the colors that you're using, because of the size that you designed it. Okay, so we need to really get with a printer and have them tell us what is going to fit our budget. How many pages is this document, should this document be in order to, come under $5,000 or whatever your client's budget is, right? It makes sense, right? We definitely want to know this before we start designing. And so many times, when you're doing this for the first time, you end up designing first and then going to find a printer only to find out that, it's impossible. You just don't have the money, or the format's too big, or whatever. They might not even have presses that can print your job. So we really need to know that first. Okay, as far as finding a printer, that can be a little tricky. You can Google it, printers, near me, commercial printers near me. You can read Yelp reviews and do all of that. And I highly suggest you do that, because that's the way we find people these days. We find them based on reviews. We find them based on, star ratings, other people that have, dealt with them. And that's, there's that's a great thing. I mean, wow, that's a very powerful tool that we have now in finding vendors, whether it's a plumber or electrician or a printer. We look. Now, word of mouth is always a good recommendation for a printer. If you know anyone that has used a printer before, that can recommend you a good print job. I could recommend you right now a very reputable printer that we've used, RDS Printing. You could look them up. They're in Ontario. Robert Seitz is a very good friend of ours. And they've been doing this for many, many years. We've also had Platt College field trips to RDS. They've been so kind as to open up their print shop and take us through, a field trip. But they're not the only printers in town. And what you want to do is you want to get bids, just like in anything that you're doing, home remodeling or whatever. You want to call in, and get about 3 different bids. And 3 has always been kind of the number that we always want to get. And then start comparing prices. Okay, but what's important is that it's apples to apple comparison. You want to give the specs, the exact same specs, to 3 different printers, and then see what they're going to come in at. Now, there's a lot of different factors involved in getting an estimate for printing. They're going to need to know how many pages you have. They're going to need to know how many photographs, what kind of paper. That's a big cost, is what type of paper are you printing on? So if you don't know that, and most of us when we're starting out, we don't know anything about paper. We don't know the difference between laid and linen and 24-pound bond versus 24-pound, text versus 24-pound cover. And so we need to know, and that's when we need to solicit the expertise of the printer. What I suggest you do basically is let that printer know that this is the first job that you're doing, okay? I mean, there's no there's no other way. You don't want the printer to take advantage of you, but you do want to get the best of their expertise. And if you don't have it, first of all, they're going to know right away. Within 5 minutes of talking to you, they're going to know whether you know anything about printing. Because, it's just one of those things, If they ask you a question, you can't answer it, they're going to say, wow, okay, now I know who I'm dealing with. Just like anybody else, right? And not to feel embarrassed about that. Do not ever feel like you need to know all of these things before you ever work with a printer. Just go in there and be honest and say, look, this is my first printing job, and I want it to come out, good, and this is what I want, though. I want these colors to be accurate. I want these photos to come out sharp. Okay? Even though I've never printed something, that's what I expect. Okay? And no one's going to, you don't have to tell an auto mechanic, you tell an auto mechanic what you want. Don't want to hear this noise anymore. Okay? I don't have to know how to fix it. Okay? That's not my job. That's your job. So, do that and be honest with the printer and get your 3 estimates. Now, be prepared for estimates to kind of be all over the place from printer to printer. That has always been the case, and just expect that. So with the same job, with the same description, and you can email them PDFs of your design. Okay. Now, let's say you haven't even designed it yet. Okay. Then basically what you're going to have to give them is just verbal information. It's going to be 24 pages. It's going to have roughly 5 to 6 photos on each page. I want it on nice paper stock, something that you would recommend that's not too expensive, blah, 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 right? You give every printer the exact same specs. And then you wait for the prices to come in. And they'll usually quote pretty quick. And you might find that one printer is way more expensive than the other. And you might be kind of confused with that, saying, well, gee, why is that so? Because it's the same job, right? Well, printers, like any other business, they're based on, their pricing is based on how much it costs them to do the job. And one printer might, it might cost them a lot more. You go to a big commercial printer that does this a lot, and they might be very cheap. Okay, there's a lot of online quick printers out there. There's tons of them. Vista Print for business cards, Got Print, these things. They do brochures and flyers and all of that. And they can do that really cheap. And, that might be, a better place to go. But they're not going to give you that service. I mean, basically, you order from them, they deliver, they print it, deliver, and that's it. It's already done. But when you deal with a commercial printer, you're able to go there and do a press check. And I'm going to talk about press checks. And they'll walk you through and show you proofs, of what it's going to look like. And then you can make changes and revisions if color isn't right. With quick print places, that's it. If the color is off, that's your tough luck. You have 5,000 business cards now, and they're not going to reprint it. Okay. I mean, if the color you chose on the computer is different than when it comes back in print, that's tough luck, buddy. So you have to ask yourself, how important is all of this? Sometimes quick print places are, you need to use them, and other times you need more specific attention to your print job. So based on, let's say you had 3 reputable printers and they're kind of all over the place, the rule of thumb has always been kind of go in the middle. If something is too cheap, the same thing applies to, if it's that cheap, then I don't know. I would be hesitant. So, a price in the middle. So anyway, and then also reputation too. You always want reputation. And if it's a good printer, it's up to you whether you want to spend the money on that, but you'll probably always get a great job. And sometimes it's just worth paying for it. You get what you pay for. That is exactly true in the print industry. You get what you pay for. Okay. So once you have decided on a printer, then you want to talk the details of the job. And again, I'm not talking about quick printers like Got Print or Vista Print or Sir Speedy or things like that. Well, Sir Speedy is an actual building that you would go into. But all of the online printers, basically, you never talk to anybody. You just email them, or you could chat with them. I don't know. But you pretty much submit through the internet, create a PDF file, send it to them, and then they just print the job. But if you're working with a commercial printer, then the first thing you want to do is, again, probably a phone conversation with them, and then explain the job, get a basic price, and then call them and say, okay, I would like to meet with you, and try and find some printer that is local, some place that, you don't have to drive all across town to meet with, because you'll probably be going there maybe 2 or 3 times in the course of a job. And I'm talking about commercial printers, so this may happen. You may never deal with a commercial printer, but that's what I want to talk about, because the quick print stuff is really easy. So the best thing is a face-to-face. Walk in the door, introduce yourself. You've already made contact with them. You've already talked about the job. But now is the time to meet them, shake their hands, etc., and establish your relationship with them, and so that they know who they're dealing with. And then they're going to ask you a lot of questions, and you want to ask them a lot of questions. But basically, you want to really now talk nitty-gritty about what it is they're expecting from you. And you tell them what software you're using, and they'll say, okay, when you color things black, you need to make them rich black and not just black. Okay, and we'll talk about that. You need bleeds on all of your photos. You need to make sure that your color space is correct. that you're in CMYK and you don't have RGB in your color space when you create the file. We need to make sure that the resolution of your photos, the quiz that you just had, are correct. Okay, that's important. Because if they're not, then it's going to prolong the job. And then you're going to talk about, how the process works. What am I sending you? Am I sending you native InDesign files, or am I sending you PDFs? What happens after that? What's the next step? And then, just basically have them explain what their process is, what their timeline is going to be, when you're going to get scheduled on their schedule, when they're going to go to press, and what is your involvement once your job is on press. Are you going to do a press check, which if you're dealing with a commercial printer, you're definitely going to do a press check. And they'll set up a time for you to come in, and they're going to run the job. And they're usually run, if it's a two-sided job, they'll run the first side, have you sign off on it, and then they'll run the second side maybe the next day, and then they'll have you sign off on it. But anyway, in any event, they're going to need approvals. Now, they're going to need approvals, meaning that they're going to insist that you sign agreements that what they showed you is what you approved, so that it protects them legally from anything that happens later on. You can't come back and say, oh, well, I never, that color was off and I never approved that. Now you need to, on your end, I highly recommend this. In fact, I almost insist with clients that they are part of the press check. Now, your clients might not have time to go to a printer and do a press check. If you can get your clients to do that, though, it just makes it so much easier on your part, and you'll feel a lot more confident. You won't have a client coming back to you later saying, hey, what happened to this? I never approved this. So you want to get the sufficient approvals from your client too. Normally, what I would do is ask my client to come with me on the press check and say, okay, we're doing a press check today at 2:00 in the afternoon. We're going to meet down at RDS Printing. Maybe we'll have lunch after that, whatever. And you do the press check, and then when Robert brings up the sheet and says, okay, what do you think about this? Both of your eyes are on it. You're agreeing, your client's agreeing. He asks for a signature. You both sign it, and everything is cool. Okay? Everybody's happy. Client's happy, you're happy, Robert's happy. Yeah.
When if we're working at like a design studio
Mm-hmm.
is it gonna have a job doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna have to still know what printer we go to, or are we gonna have, or is it usually that the company itself will have a printer?
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Very good question. It all depends. A lot of design firms use their own printers. There's times when clients have used their own printers, where a client will say, look, I just need you to design this and don't worry about it. I'll have it printed. If that's that's a good scenario too. That's a situation you might definitely like, because you don't have to deal with that. But as a designer, you want to deal with the printing, because think of it this way, Ruben. Let's say you're a painter, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have an idea for a painting, right? You're basically in design, you're having someone else do your painting for you, right? I mean, they're painting it. Aren't you concerned about that?
I am.
I mean, yeah, you are, right? That's your design. Those are your photos. You color corrected those photos. Heck yeah, you want that printer to do a good job. So to have a client just take the job away from you, just pay you for the file and then go get it printed. I mean, for me, that doesn't really sit well. I want to know what it came out, how it came out.
Yeah.
I want to have some type of say in that, if possible.
Gotcha.
But, sometimes it is out of your control. So if you're working for a design firm, they might just say, look, Ruben, just design it. We'll take care of the printing. We have other people that do press checks and all of that. So that is very possible.
Gotcha.
Okay. So making sure that you're understanding their process. You don't have to understand necessarily, all the technical details of, I used to teach things like trapping. Students should know what trapping is and what overprinting is and knockouts and all of that. That is important to know as a designer, because as you're designing things, you don't want to design something that's going to cause too many problems or not be able to, print. You don't want to use fine type, light type, and think that it's going to reverse out of a solid black background. Okay, because it's just not going to happen. And so you kind of need to know this. I'm going to switch real quick to this right here. Okay, let's say we were printing this. This is very light type being reversed out of this heavy brown color.
Mm-hmm.
And this brown color is probably made up of, all four process colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, combinations of that. In fact, if I click this brown here, and if I go to what this brown is made out of, it's made out of 44% cyan, 70% magenta, 68 yellow, and 42% black. That's four different colors that you're expecting this light type to reverse out of. And when I say reverse, everything is printed on white paper. So what you're seeing here is the white paper. All of this brown is printing all around those characters, right? Can you imagine that? It's like coloring, right? You would be coloring brown around all of the white characters. So imagine something very light trying to reverse out of that brown, out of 4 hits of color, right? That's asking a lot. And what's going to happen is your E's are going to plug up and your D's are going to plug up and your O's are going to plug up, and it's going to be disaster if you use the wrong weight of type. So those are kind of some things that you need to realize. If you're printing black against white, that's a different story. You can print light type because there's no reversing out of it. You don't have color printing around this black. But when you're printing, so black on white, you can print very light type and it'll still hold. Okay, anyway, I just wanted to kind of, I'll come back to that in a sec. Let me just get to the rest of this. Okay, so we're talking about understanding the workflow of the printer. We're talking about getting the client involved in the process. And then we'll talk about some of the things that you really need to focus on. Okay, one of the things that you need to really focus on outside of resolution, and I made a big deal of resolution, had you take a quiz on it and everything. But here's the next huge area, and that is proofing. Okay. Now, we are in such a fast-paced society today that proofing is really getting overlooked. But I tell you right now, clients will not stand for mistakes. They will not stand for typographic errors. If they send you copy that's clean, what we say clean copy, meaning that they've proofed it, they've had professional writers write it, and all they're asking you to do is design it into the layout, to typeset it and put it in the layout. If for some reason you misspell a word, or what I would always do is whatever copy they gave me, I would copy and paste it into the document. I would not try and retype it. Okay. I would insist that they give me a digital document, whether it's Microsoft, Word, a Word document or whatever. And I would copy and paste that into my design so that I wouldn't have to type anything. However, and I'm going to give you the honest truth of this, is that when you do that, you still have to proof it. Okay? And here's the deal is that clients have given me copy, um, upon my insisting. They've given me copy, and it's terrible. It's written bad. Because just because they're your client, sometimes, unless it's professionally written by a writer that really knows their English and punctuation and all of that, I've gotten copy from clients that is just terrible. I mean, it's embarrassingly terrible. And I know that that client would not want that kind of copy to be printed on a brochure or flyer. And that's a tough situation to be in when you have to have that conversation with your client and say, client, I really am going to, with all due respect and with all, politeness, this is not good. Okay, it's just not. And your customers are going to literally laugh at how you wrote this. So I'm going to suggest that you have a writer write this for you. Or if you can write, and now here's another thing, right? We all think that we can write, but can we really? But if you feel confident enough where you can rewrite the copy, then do so. Offer that as a service. Now you charge for that. You definitely will charge for that, but it's just going to be better than what they gave you. And I think that is something ethically, we're going to talk about business ethics, but ethically, I think you need to do that. It is the right thing to do. As much as you might not want to do that, don't ever design something with typos and bad English, because if you put that in your portfolio, I'll tell you, you're going to get slammed for that. No one will hire you. So make sure that that's proofed and written correctly. And now if your client is just one of those that just says it's good enough, I don't care, that's a decision that you're going to have to make. Do you want to continue doing business with this client? You're definitely not going to put their work in your portfolio, that's for sure. But if it's a paying job and you got to have you need the money and you're just going to do it, then that's up to you to make that call. But proofing is something that most professional businesses are going to want, professionally written things. And if there is a mistake in the copy, it really needs to be found. And the way you do that is after you proof the job, you send it back to your client and you have them proof it. Now, you insist that they sign off on it, okay? That they approve it with a signature, because that protects you against a client suing you for the job, which is something you do not want to be in small claims court, where the client says, hey, I never approved this and my designer screwed it up by misspelling all these words. Okay, so you need to get that signature. Man, that signature is probably the most important signature outside of, confirming your fee. Remember we said you need a confirmation of your fee. So make sure that your client has signed off on it. Now the printer is going to have you sign off on it also, because the printer is going to say, you gave me the job. We printed it exactly the way you gave it to us, and you signed off on that. Okay? We didn't change anything. So if there's a typo in there, or a bad sentence or a period that was missed or whatever, they're going to come back at you and say, look, we printed exactly what you gave us. Okay, so understand that that's going to happen, and you are going to be liable for that. Yeah.
Are there contracts like maybe already like on like the internet or like that you know of that we can like have like
Yes.
a template? It's like, hey,
Yes.
sign this piece of paper for me to acknowledge the fact that you saw
Exactly.
this and you accepted what I gave you.
Exactly. Right. There are forms that you might want to check into that Petrula Vrontikis zip file that I gave you of all those forms. It's
Uh-huh.
on one of the assignments. I think it's the first lecture. And but there is that. In fact, what we used to do is paste that to the back of our artboards and have the client sign off on that. That was a sticker that we pasted on every single artboard that we did for a client. This is way back in the days before it was digital. But yes, to answer your question, what it basically says is you have read and proofed this job and you approve it the way it is. Okay? That's it. And that will stand up in court if they ever come back to you and say, hey, we never approved this, or there's a typo here, that's your fault. You could technically say in the court of law that even though there is a typo, you approved it because you were the ones that were supposed to proof it. We
Yeah.
proofed it to the best of our ability. Maybe we missed something, but in the end, your signature is the final.
Okay.
Okay?
I want to get like a bunch of. I'm gonna have a stack of those.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's really important because the last thing you want to do is be called into small claims court and be sued for the cost of that job because there was a mistake. So, the best way to handle this is to make sure it just doesn't happen. Okay? And that means that it's a lot of work on all of your parts. And this is where you have to sit down with your client and explain it the way I'm explaining it to you. Okay? You have to let them know that this is very important to all of us. And so we all have to work as a team to make sure that, nothing happens like this. Okay? And I think if you can have that conversation with your client, you know, chances are there's a good chance that, very good chance that everything will come out well. Now, there are times, and this happens, okay? Like they say, it happens, where, 50,000 brochures get printed or catalogs get printed, and there are mistakes. So what happens then? You've signed everything, you've gotten your approvals, you've gotten your signatures from both the client and you and the printer, and yet there were still mistakes. First of all, the printer is not going to proof, okay? They do not do this, proofing. So you cannot go back to a printer and expect them to print the job for free. So it's either between you and your client. So what do you think is going to happen in that sense?
Mm.
And this is, I'm giving it to you the way I've experienced it and the reality of these situations. These are very difficult situations to have to, talk negotiate through.
So it's gonna, to answer to your question, they're just gonna come after you, right? They're just gonna blame you all the time.
Well, if they do, if that's their attitude, then one of two things is going to happen. Either, and this is where, getting payment is really important because you don't want at that point them to say, well, we're not paying you, because that's very easy for them to say at that point. And if you haven't gotten any money for the job, then the only recourse you have is to take them to court. Here's what normally happens, okay? It was a mistake. You both made it, right? Both the client and you made this mistake. You failed to find these mistakes, and it got printed. Now, again, I ask you, what would you do to try and negotiate this? Okay, what you want to do is you want to try and find a mutual agreement before you just blast the other side and say I'm taking you to court, right? I mean, that's not in anybody's interest to have to end up in court. I mean, you're not even going to, the court cost alone and filing the lawsuit, is just a pain. So really what you want to do is try and mitigate this, you know, um, in some type of negotiation. So what would you do? How would you approach that? I know I'm asking you a real tough question, but you know,
Could
Uh,
you, I would say I will pay half of the printer fees and you pay half.
okay,
And that would avoid me going to court.
okay, okay. That's a good proposal. That's been done many, many, many times where it's a 50-50 uh, admission of responsibility on both you and your client.
hmm.
Anything else that you could think of? Well, rather than uh, trying to trying to find that, another thing that's happened is just accepting it. Okay,
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Just act like it. Just don't look at it.
accepting it, and both of you chalk it up to doing better the next time. Now, in terms of marketing strategy, though, what you might do as a designer is offer a discount, possibly if you can afford that, on a future job. Okay, even though it's not necessarily your fault, it's both of your fault. But what you're doing is you're making a concession here to keep that client as a future client. The minute you argue with the client, I guarantee you will never have that client again. Okay, they'll never use you again. Bank on that. And if that is a client that brings in, you bring in, some good dollars with, let's say it's a client that, you bill, $50,000 a year with, you don't want to lose that client, right? I mean, that's $50,000 of your income. So the minute you argue with them, the first thing they're going to say is, fine, okay, we'll pay for the reprint, but see you later. We'll never use you again. So is that worth it to you? Is it worth sacrificing a $50,000 a year client? Or is it possible eating some of that cost for the sake of this job? Again, that's a question that you have to do. I know we're getting into ethics now. We're getting into, but anyway, the point I'm really trying to make is just do your best to not get that to happen. Okay, that's
Hmm.
why proofing and written approvals are so important in this business, because the printing of a job is the most costly, usually, of a graphic design job. That's where most of the money goes down. Okay. And lastly, let me just um, wrap this up by talking a little bit about the money issue. Okay. Because printing can end up being in the thousands of dollars, sometimes in the tens of thousands of dollars. Who, how does that work? Okay. When you take a job to a printer, like if you walked in this afternoon and you had a job and you gave them a file and you said, I need 50,000 of these brochures. The printer is going to give you an estimate, after all of this that we talked about. And he's going to say, okay, it's going to cost you, $17,500 for this job.
Shoo.
Okay. And he's going to say, we want 50% up front. Now, let me ask you a question. Do any of you have $8,500 in the bank to cover that right
That's
now?
a solid no there, boss.
No.
Okay. So, so what do you do?
Get a loan, maybe. I mean, or like I'm assuming you're talking with the client, and because the client's paying for that printing, right?
Right.
It's not like coming. It's just so it should be like the money. That's
Right.
where this gets confusing to me. Like, because that's a lot of money, but like,
Okay.
are
Okay.
they paying for that?
Right.
Or
I
So
understand the confusion. Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
I think for me, I would talk to the client and I would say, okay, so this is the situation. Before I do your design and the printing, this is what they're going to ask me for the printer. They're going to, and within the own contract, I would say, I need you to pay for like half of the materials. So if we get a printer, this is the budget. So always have a budget.
Mm-hmm.
That when you get to the printer, you have the 50% up front.
Correct. Correct. And that's usually the way it goes down, where in your initial meetings with the client, as you're talking about cost of the job, for most of us freelancers, we don't have, we're not established businesses. We don't have that kind of money in the bank to cover printing.
yeah,
So normally what we would say is we would tell the client that the printing is going to cost this much. They're going to ask for 50% upfront, and you're going to be responsible for paying them. It's not going to come out of my pocket, it's going to come out of your pocket because it's your job.
mm,
And so be ready for that. Okay, we're going to use a reputable printer. If you want, you can be involved in the printer selection and who we choose. If you want, I recommend that clients deal directly with the printer. Okay, and I'm kind of out of it. I design the job, I work with the printer, I do press checks, but I'm not involved in the money issue with printers. Because number one, I don't have that kind of money to cover it. Now, here's the downside of that, okay? If you are a design business, if you're a design firm that does have that money in the bank, and, a lot of design firms do, or advertising agencies, they buy out the printing. And then they charge the client for the printing later at the end of the job. And they mark it up 20%. Now, how would you like to pocket 20% of $17,000?
sounds like a fantastic time.
Yeah, that's your commission for buying out the printing. But you got to pony up the 8,500 deposit, right? And you're going to also have to pony up the $8,500 final payment. And then you're going to charge the client 17,000 bucks plus 20%. Okay? Yeah.
I know it's probably like a little bit of a far-fetched question, but I'm just gonna ask anyways.
Nothing
Like,
is far fetched.
what's the like likelihood? Because like,
Mm-hmm.
what I would really want to do in the future is eventually open up my own design studio or advertising agency,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I would like to do. I would like because I hate to break it to a lot of people. I do not want to work all my life. I've worked already enough. My back hurts, my knees hurt, and I want to be able to do what I love.
Right?
Without having to, I want to be able to start my own business. That would be
Sure.
great. Like, what's the likelihood I can actually achieve that? Because I mean, I don't come from a family of money. My family is essentially broke.
Right.
And
Right.
like, I don't have assets to like, liquidate or whatever. And so like, what's the possibility of me actually starting my own design studio and eventually having that level of, clients? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that makes entire sense. And, you know, I, I have to tell you, and please, I mean, it's not, anyway, the answer to your question is that it's very possible. And I'm going to tell you why it's very possible. Because this is a business that you do not have to, this is not a business where you have to buy, you have to buy product, where you have to have you have to store product. Imagine any other business, right? You need to get a business loan. You need to, buy inventory, have inventory, have supply. You need to have machinery, equipment, an office, leasing, all of that, right? And that costs a lot of money. And so obviously you go and you apply for a loan. But in order to get a loan, you have to have a solid business plan. You have to show the bank that, this is a going deal. And, I mean, it's a it's going to make money, and you have to have, assets to back up collateral, to back up your, what you're asking for. This is a service that we're providing. This is graphic design. I mean, what does this cost us? A computer,
Yeah, not that much.
a printer, uh, I mean, the overhead for doing this is minimal compared to any other business. So yes, you can certainly create a business as a graphic designer. Now, in that sense, and I'm going to be talking about this more in, in other classes, but one of the things that is very, what do I want to say is, there's not too many obstacles necessarily in this, and the only obstacle would be to, what happens when you start getting a lot of work. And obviously what you want is, you have to do this very slowly. In the beginning, you're everybody. You're your own salesperson. You run your business, you do the art, you do all of these things. And when it's only you doing all of these tasks, it's very hard to build up the business, right? It's very hard to get, even if you got more business, you don't have time to do it because you have all these other things to do. So what design firms have done is they've gone into partnership with other people. And, a good partnership, I think, first of all, is a partnership with someone that is savvy in sales. Now, if you are that person, okay, I'll tell you right now, I'm not that person. I'm the guy doing the artwork. That's what I chose to do all my life, is be the one behind the computer. That's what I enjoy. Now, I know I don't make as much money as the other people that sell, the salespeople, but that's just not my cup of tea. But if you're an artist and you got together with someone that can sell your art, to sell design, that can schmooze clients and can find clients and can do the marketing, they bring in the accounts, you do the art, and the two of you work in tandem to build the business. Okay. Now, they're probably going to take a larger cut than what you get because they got the job, right? That's always been the case. The sales guys, man, they make the money. They make the money, right? They bring in the jobs. They get the clients. They get the bigger piece of the pie. But at the same time, I don't know. You can work out any agreement, you want. And then little by little, as you start getting more business, then you have to start hiring people. Okay? Hiring freelancers. And a lot of people start by hiring students out of school, that are looking for experience. They can't afford to pay them that much, but, and then little by little, they start building up their business and start getting more accounts, more money, more money comes in. So yes, I mean, to answer your question, it's very possible. The biggest part of all of this, if you're wanting to run your own business, is making sure that you have a good marketing strategy and you have a good marketing network.
I actually have a buddy who's like really, I mean, he's majored in sales and like he's like a fantastic salesman. So I might have to talk to him. He's one of those guys he can sell a ketchup popsicle to a lady in white gloves.
Okay.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. I don't know how he does it, but like, I had to tell him to stop trying to sell me stuff because he always is really convincing. So
Hey, get with that guy, man. That's the guy you want to go into business with. You do the art, you do the graphics, they schmooze the clients, and it's basically account people. In an advertising agency, they're called the account executives. And the account executives are the ones that manage the account. They deal mostly with the clients. They're in touch with the clients, every day. You are more the designer. So I've worked with many account people in my career, and, they know a little bit about design, but, so yeah, does that kind of answer your question
it
a little
does
bit?
because like this is something. I mean, obviously, like I love graphic design. I love creating, and I love doing what I do. But like at the end of the day, I want to make sure I'm as financially stable as possible, and
Mm-hmm.
and also like I want to make I want to be I want to do something. I want to like I want to be a boss eventually. Like I've worked under people all my life, and so
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty awesome to be
Mm-hmm.
my own boss. And I'm just tired of having some old dude that's stale and crusty tell me that like I'm talking about admirals in the Navy tell me that I'm a POS.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's this is I mean that's something I want to do. I want obviously I'd start from the bottom. Let's start like find a job first. And
The key is to provide benefits, a benefit for your client. You want to sell this business based on how it benefits your client. How will increase their sales, how it will increase their customer awareness of their products and their services. If they're not seeing a benefit in what you do, they're not going to pay you money. They're not going to hire you. But if you can sell this and say, look, I can create this for you, and this can, people will, they will react to this, and they will click on this, and they will read this, or, So anyway, the point is that yeah, not too much overhead in starting a graphic design business, very minimal, and it's just really the context that you have and how you're selling your. And I think now in the COVID era or the post-COVID era, we have a lot of opportunities out there right now. You guys should be really focused now on finding those opportunities to sell graphic design, because a lot of businesses are, unfortunately, there's a lot of businesses that went under during the last year. They just couldn't survive. But now that things are starting to heat up, the economy is really coming back strong. The stock market has been going up in the last few months. And there's a lot of businesses out there that are cranking it up. And new startups now who were afraid to start up, before COVID, or during COVID, are now saying, okay, there's the green light. Let's crank it up. My kind of barometer for this is every Friday, Carly and I walk our dog around Victoria Gardens. And over the last year, I don't know how many shops have gone under. I mean, it's really, if you walk around there, it's kind of like, wow, no more of this, no more of that. And now I'm starting to see a kind of slow resurgence. It's a great opportunity if you want a store in Victoria Gardens right now, because there's a lot of available space, and it's only going to get better. So I think a lot of businesses are, ready for that. And, if they're ready for that, they're going to need all of those things that you can do, all of those graphics, business cards, logos, you name it. So, yeah, there were actually a lot of opportunities for graphic design during COVID, believe it or not.
yeah, I got a few jobs.
Yeah.
I got a lot of people were just starting car clubs, and I mean, especially in my area, it's like I think I'm not sure. I think I was telling you yesterday's class, like that. I mean, there's people here where I live, it's
Mm-hmm.
car central, and so everyone's starting car clubs, and I know people who are in car clubs. So like, I've gotten I gotten like a word of mouth saying, hey, I like your logo. Where'd you get it? Like, oh, over here, this guy did it, and then so I got like a bunch of like word of mouth clients, and then a lot of the logos are pretty simple. Like they just like, hey, give me this word in big bold
Mm-hmm.
text,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And
Yeah.
so that's I mean I've seen that a lot, just a lot of like small ones, but like there's something.
Um, Around my area, businesses are starting to pop up. So,
Yes.
so I finally started applying for different jobs, even though I have a job right now and I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably not it. Um, I saw a lot of them and I applied for them on what is it called? Indeed
Indeed. Uh-huh.
and on
Great.
Monster. Let's see if I hear some, but and it's really hard because here in Victorville, there's not a lot of work. We're talking about a lot of work just came out. So I'm just like, I want to take the opportunity. And so I just did that on Monday and Sunday. I applied for all these jobs. And
Oh, good for you. Good for you. And I think this year, between now and the end of the year, I think things are just going to get better, man. There's just,
Mhm.
a lot
I
of
mean, I'm
people are.
you're seeing like a positive trend all over. Like I lived by like a couple high schools. I mean, this not the high schools are have kids in them, and I'm like that's like the weirdest thing I've seen in the past like 6 months.
Hmm.
Like kids in uniform and like playing baseball. Like it blew my mind.
Yeah, I think everybody's going to get a lot busier. Look at all those people and that have been shut out of Disneyland and cruises and just about everything. Now everyone is going, wants to go back, and it's like airlines are going to fill up, and I mean it's already happening now. It's really I mean restaurants are still being very kind of cautious, but um, you know people are buying,
Yeah.
Plus, they got the stimulus money now too. So a lot of people are, they just want to get back to it, and they've been out for so long that the demand right now is huge, and
Yeah.
the supply might not be that, might not be meeting the demand. So you might have to wait longer for things, but again, more things are going to start happening. So yeah, okay, it's a
I'm
good
excited.
time. It's a good time right now. Feel really good about it. So, um, yeah, as the economy goes, so does graphic design. So, like they were saying before COVID, I don't want to belabor this. I'll be done in a sec. But right before right before COVID, they were everybody was saying that this economy is going to come back, and it's going to come back strong, and it's going to come back fast. And the reason is that it was never broken. COVID stopped the economy, but the economy was always strong. You know,
Mhm.
whether or not you believe in the past president and his administration, one thing you have to admit is that the economy was very strong under that administration.
That was a very lucrative time when I was like the past couple of years.
Yes. And so it was not broken. It wasn't like 2008 with the housing crisis and
Eesh.
the banking crisis. It's not like that. We can come back very strong, very quick. And
Well,
I think we're going
they're
to
saying
see
like
that.
after the first stimulus, like they saw the most recent stimulus, the one that came out,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
like the online spending and just spending in general by the American people went up like 12%. Like it's crazy. They're like they were expecting like 6%, but it was double. Like it was like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
People just
Yeah.
didn't want to spend money. They have nothing. They just like I got nothing to spend. Like,
I had nothing to do, so what else to do is to spend and
yeah, I
shop.
have my late uncle. His name is Phil.
Hmm.
He actually worked as a TV executive for, I mean, 30, 40 years. I mean, KTLA, KCAL9. I mean,
Oh, okay.
huge TV executives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he passed away last year in the beginning, but right before COVID started. But when I kind of expressed to him that I wanted to do this, and he looked at me like dead. I've never seen him like he looked at me dead in the eyes because he's a creative. He's like a radio. He used to be Raul on
Mm.
KMET 93 point something I think
Hmm.
a radio talk show.
Hmm.
And he looked at me dead in the eyes. He's like graphic design. He's like it's small right now. It's big, but it's small. It's gonna get bigger. He's like, look at me in the eye. He's like, if you're gonna do graphic design, do it. It's good. There's money. There's gonna be money there very soon. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right. I was like, I kind of was like, I guess this is me. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, I believe him, and I mean, so far, I've from what I've seen, I've seen definitely a positive trend like of creatives. So
Right.
um,
Well,
yeah,
the
I think
world is changing really fast.
yeah.
And, as each day goes on, each year goes on, things are just speeding up so much. So we really have to take advantage of opportunities
Mhm.
because
I've noticed,
they,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, no, go ahead.
I've noticed three huge places: retail, logistics, and
Yes.
advertising.
Yes.
And my dad and uncles and everything, they're in logistics. And then we're talking about advertising. I guess I would be in a small structure of advertising.
Hmm.
When
Oh, definitely.
it
Graph.
comes to retail, like nobody has anything to do until like things open up. Even the Gettys opening up in May, but I'm talking about even the things inside Getty are going to be selling. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like right now, what's so big is logistics, retail, and advertising.
Right. And just keep an eye on the jobs rate, how fast the economy is creating jobs. That report, I don't know if you guys ever, or if you're interested in that, or it's something that you need to keep an eye out though. Usually on Thursdays, that's when the job reports come out. And start watching how many jobs are created in this country as the weeks go on. We're already seeing a drop in unemployment, a tremendous drop in unemployment,
Yeah.
which means that more jobs are being created. And anytime the economy is creating jobs, graphic design is part of it. The more businesses out there that are starting up or continuing on, the more graphics they need. So, yeah, it's definitely a positive trend, I think, and take advantage of those opportunities because at the same time, I mean, God forbid, all we need is another one of these things, and you know what happened. You know how fast that can happen. So yeah, jump on it. It's no time to wait. Even though you guys aren't finished with school, don't wait. Don't wait to be finished with school. Get out there right now and get whatever you can get. And work around school, but don't drop out of school. but again, yeah, take advantage of what's out there. So okay, that's all I have for today. I'm
Do we
going
have any?
to. There is a discussion question for tomorrow, and then we will meet again on Thursday. And then I'll have some type of an assignment for you to turn in on Sunday. But I'm pretty much done with or want to get out of Prepress. Not that it's not important, but I really want to spend a lot of the time in business ethics because you guys seem to have a very strong interest in business, and I do want to talk about that. I want to talk about um, good businesses, good business plans in graphic design, and not so good business plans in graphic design because I've worked for both types of companies. Some that were really strong, really did well, and others that just did not have it together. And I want to, if you are going to work for a company, which I highly recommend that you do, I want you to be aware of what to look for. Okay, when you answer that job application, or when they call you in and say you're hired. Okay, so anyway, we'll talk more about that. Anything else?
I wanted to ask you a question after this class
Oh,
session.
okay, sure. Yeah, I'll be on. Okay, so if nobody else has a question, you guys can log off, and I will see you Thursday.
I'll see you
Adios.
guys then.
Bye.
Okay, take care.